So let's dive into a pretty wild paradox. The idea that a low-tech education might just be the best way to get kids ready for our super high-tech world. I know, it sounds completely backward, right? But stick with me because there's a really compelling logic to it that we're going to unpack. It really all kicks off with headlines like this one. You've got the very people who are designing our digital future. We're talking engineers, execs in Silicon Valley, and they are sending their own kids to schools that have, well, a shocking lack of screens. It's a trend that's been bubbling up for years, and it makes you ask a pretty big question. I mean, why would the people who know technology inside and out be the most careful about it when it comes to their own kids? Are they seeing something the rest of us are missing? That is the big question we're going to try and figure out today. And this gets us right to the heart of this modern dilemma in education. For decades now, the big push has been more tech in the classroom. More smartboards, more tablets, more educational apps. The whole idea is that the earlier kids get exposed to tech, the better off they'll be. But what if that entire assumption is just wrong? Here's the potential problem. Some argue that our obsession with standardized testing can seriously backfire. We end up teaching what's easy to measure, like memorizing facts, instead of uniquely human skills like creativity, problem solving, and real critical thinking. In a world where you can just Google any fact in 2 seconds, the argument is that we're kind of educating away from the very skills we need the most. So, what's the alternative? Well, it's an approach that isn't really anti-technology. It's actually intensely pro-child development. It's all about introducing the right tools, but at the right time. The whole idea is called developmentally appropriate practice, and it's actually pretty simple, but it's also profound. What a 7-year-old needs to learn and grow is just fundamentally different from what a 17-year-old needs. So instead of this one-size-fits-all tech policy for every grade, the tools and the activities are picked based on where a child is at developmentally. And this is a super important point. This is not about technology abstinence, completely banning screens forever. It's about technology deferred. The goal isn't to raise a generation of Luddites. It's to build a really strong foundation of real-world skills first. Then you can introduce the digital tools when a kid actually has the maturity to become a master of the tech and not just a servant to it. It all comes down to this guiding principle: head, heart, and hands. It's a holistic model that believes real learning engages the whole person. The idea is that before you can think abstractly with your head, you need to build that emotional intelligence with your heart and practical skills with your hands. This creates the foundation for everything else. Think about it. Working with your hands, say in woodworking, that builds the 3D spatial reasoning that's absolutely essential for future engineers or architects. Okay, so theory is one thing, but what does this actually look like in the real world? Many of these schools the Silicon Valley execs choose are Waldorf schools, and they've been using this approach for over 100 years. So what really goes on inside a classroom that has no screens? Sometimes a random person on the internet just nails it. This parent on a Reddit forum really captured the whole philosophy. The focus is on how to think, not just what to think. It's about building the internal wiring for solving problems, not just downloading information. And that is a crucial skill for mastering technology later on. And the tools they use? Well, they might surprise you. Instead of coding apps, you find knitting needles. Instead of PowerPoint presentations, there's just rich oral storytelling that forces kids to create their own mental pictures. They literally make their own textbooks. They get their hands dirty with woodworking and gardening. They learn through music, through movement. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. As this parent points out, something as simple as knitting, it's not just a hobby. That complex, sequential, two-handed movement, it literally helps build and strengthen the neural pathways in the brain. It's laying the physical groundwork for abstract thinking, like math and logic. And this is the aha moment, right? These hands-on activities are seen as pre-digital literacies. They build the fundamental skills you just can't get from swiping on a screen. You get fine motor control from woodworking, you get sequential thinking from following a knitting pattern, and you learn resilience from having to fix your own mistakes when a project goes sideways. These are the real building blocks of a problem solver. Okay, but this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Knitting is nice, but how on earth does that prepare a kid for a world that runs on code and algorithms? It seems like a huge, massive leap. And the answer is maybe the most mind-bending part of this whole approach. You can actually teach the core principles of computer science without ever touching a computer. The strategy is called unplugged computing. So check out this image. It's called the parity magic trick. Basically, you arrange these cards in a grid, and you add an extra row and column to make sure every single line has an even number of black squares. What does this teach? A core concept in how data gets sent around the internet: error detection. If just one card gets flipped by mistake, the pattern is broken, and you can instantly spot the error. It's a physical game that makes a deeply abstract digital concept totally tangible. Or get this, you can teach computational logic gates, the and, or, and not functions that are the bedrock of literally all computing, with a game of Twister. A command like put your right hand on red and your left foot on blue, well, that's a physical demonstration of an and gate. It's fun, it's physical, and it makes abstract logic something you can feel and understand. So you see, the crucial point here is that these schools aren't teaching kids how to type or how to use a specific app, because that stuff changes constantly. They're teaching computational thinking. That's the ability to break down a big problem, to see the patterns, to design a logical solution. That's the real skill. The coding language you use, that's just the tool you pick up later. So when you put all this together, what's the end game? What's the real payoff of this whole technology-deferred idea? It's about fundamentally changing our relationship with our digital tools. By building up a strong sense of self, resilience, and real problem-solving skills before you introduce the endless distractions and easy answers of a smartphone, the goal is to raise people who can use technology with intention, without being used by it. They're engaging from a position of strength, not dependency. This is so cool. A teacher in one of the studies shared this fascinating little bit of language. In German, one way to say you're using a computer is Computer bedienen, which literally means to serve the computer. And that just perfectly captures the passive relationship so many of us fall into, right? The goal of this kind of education is to make sure students are always the master, never the servant. And that kind of leaves us with this final big thought to chew on. We've all been taught to think that being digitally literate is about how early and how often our kids are on screens. But what if that's all wrong? What if true, deep digital literacy actually begins in the real physical world, with our heads, our hearts, and our hands?